across sectors, including government, businesses, academia, and the NGOs are essential to spur breakthrough. So moreover, we must prioritize the exchange of knowledge and best practices globally, ensuring that developing nations have access to these transformative solutions. Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, so as I conclude, I want to acknowledge that the challenges posed by rising sea levels are super significant, yet they are not inexplicable. With the right combination of effective innovations, collaboration, and unwavering commitment, we can effectively address these pressing issues. Let us envision our future where the Indo-Pacific region thrives, resilience against the impact of climate change, and united in our pursuit of sustainable development. This future is within our reach, provided we continue to work together with determination and shared purpose. So thank you very much for all your committed and your presence today. Together, let us join and take decisive steps necessary to secure a sustainable future for all. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ibu Fifi. Please remain on stage for a photo session. To join on stage for the photo session, I would like to invite Professor Irwan Mailano, Professor of Earth Sciences and Technology, Institut Teknologi Bandung, His Excellency Mr. Rexton Annex Ramo Favia, Minister for National Planning and Development Coordination, Solomon Islands, Her Excellency Ms. Dwikorita Karnawati, Head of the Agency for Meteorology, Climatology and Geophysics of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Nishal Sarjo, Indonesia Country Representative of Deltares, Mr. Ahmad Kamish El Shaid, Head of UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific, Ms. Madeline Moss, Minister Counselor for Governance and Human Development at the Australian Embassy in Jakarta, His Excellency Bapak Tri Tariat, Director General for Multilateral Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. Thank you, Ibu Fifi. You may return to your seat. To all moderator and panelists, please stay on stage and take your respective seats. To start the thematic session, I would like to introduce our moderator, Professor Irwan Mailano, Professor of Earth Sciences and Technology, Institut Teknologi Bandung. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Irwan is an academic at ITB and is currently the Dean of the Faculty of Earth Sciences and Technology. He was appointed as Dean in 2020. He first joined ITB as a lecturer in the same faculty in 1998, immediately after obtaining his bachelor's degree in Geodetic Sciences in 1997. After teaching for 5 years, he continued his master's and doctoral studies in Earth Sciences at Nagoya University in 2003. Professor Irwan's academic interests include sub-oceanic geodetic activity and land subsidence, with numerous published Key One journals. Professor Irwan Mailano, the stage is yours.
Thank you for the introductions, MC. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As already introduced, I'm Irwan Mailano, and I will be the moderators for the sessions. Welcome to the fourth thematic sessions with the theme Rising Sea Levels, Strategic Responses for Sustainable Developments. In these sessions, we will discuss the issue of sea level rise, which is an increasingly important issue for countries in the global south, especially archipelagic countries like Indonesia and the Pacific Island countries. I still remember in 2019, a paper published in Nature Communications. That paper tells us that by using a new scientific data from a new digital elevations model, according to the results, they found that under high emission scenarios, up to 630 million people currently live on land, projected to be below annual flood level by 2100. And as already mentioned by Ibu Vivi, addressing sea level rise requires a multidisciplinary approaches that include scientific research, national planning, disaster risk management, and of course, international cooperations. Bringing together scientists, planners, policymakers, ensure that solutions are comprehensive and address all aspects of the issue, from technical to socio-political consideration. In these sessions, we are very lucky to have 6 important panelists. And let me introduce His Excellency Mr. Rexon Annex Ramo Favia. Minister Ramo Favia is Solomon's Island Minister of National Planning and Development Coordinations of the Solomon Island. He has spoken extensively on various development issues relating to Solomon Islands and other Pacific Island countries, including climate change and sea level rise. And next to Minister Ramo Favia, we have Profesor Dwiko Rita Karnawati. Selamat sore Ibu. Head of the Agency for Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics, the Republic of Indonesia. Professor Dwiko Rita is the current head of Indonesia's BMKG. She has appointed to the post in November 2017, a geologist by training. She has received various grants from international institutions to pioneer innovations in the multi-hazard early warning system, which is now the standard in Indonesia. Currently, she is the chair of Intergovernmental Coordinations Group for the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System. And next to Professor Ibu Dwiko Rita, we have Mr. Nishal Sarju. Very nice to meet you. Indonesia County representative of Delta Res. Nishal is an experienced project manager working in the area of urban resilience in the water sectors. Within this team, he has worked mostly on risk assessment for various hazards, such as flood and land subsidence, since he joined Delta Res in 2017. And we have another panelist, Mr. Ahmad Khamis El Said. Mr. Ahmed is currently serving as regional head for the UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific. And prior to this appointment, he had worked for 16 years with the United Nations, particularly in the intersections of innovation and human development. And the next panelist is Ms. Madeleine Moos. Madeleine Moos is a career diplomat at Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. She is currently the Minister Counselor for Governance and Human Development at the Australian Embassy in Jakarta since her appointment in January 2023. Before being posted in Indonesia, she has worked in Singapore, Papua New Guinea, and lead various Australian development initiatives across Asia-Pacific regions. And the last panelist, His Excellency Bapak Tri Tariat, Director General for Multilateral Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Bapak Tri Tariat is a long-time diplomat in Indonesia Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He is currently the Director General of Multilateral Cooperation, leading the General during important events such as Indonesia's G20 presidency. He was appointed to the post in April. Previously, he was Indonesia's Consulate General in Hong Kong and quit from 2019 until 2022. All right. To begin our sessions, I would like to start with giving some questions. And I will start to give a questions to Professor Dikorita from BMKG. Professor Dikorita, how are the multiple dimensions of sea level rise is being monitored in Indonesia? Okay, yes, please, if you need to share the slides.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much indeed for this question and very important to be understood by all of us. Please allow me to use the next slide, please. When we talk about the sea level rise, we must consider several other important things or aspects which may impose or integrated in the phenomena of the sea level rise. So actually, we talk about the climate change and the impacts. So we know that one of the impact of climate change is the sea level rise. But there are also several others, like the extreme temperature, as well as the extreme weather with more intense and higher frequency and duration for the extreme weathers, also the climate extremes, and it may also related to the subsidence of the, it's not related to the climate change, but other things like more geological condition. In Indonesia especially, there is, in combination with the land subsidence due to the overpumping of the groundwater. So all integrately interaction, yeah. So the impact is compounding simultaneously and or cascading. So when we talk about the sea level rise, there must be holistic consideration and adaptation. So we need how to monitor. So the monitoring also need to be multi parameters, multi aspect of monitoring. Yes, we monitor directly the sea level rise in Indonesia. It is monitored by the Geospatial Agency, but also we monitor the weather, monitor the climate, we monitor the land subsidence, yeah, and also several other potential affecting factors. So we need to have integrated monitoring. So we need to have integrated calculation analysis. So next slide, I would like to show when we talk about the sea level rise itself, without any other effect of the other phenomena, it has been occurring sharply. Yeah. In 1993 up to 2002, it was globally measured in average 2.13 millimeter per year. In the next monitoring, it increased, yeah, up to 2012. The rate increased 3.33 millimeter per year. And finally, we have the numbers in 2023, 4.77 millimeter per year. That's for the global. What about in Indonesia? It is worse. It is 10 millimeter per year. So actually, it's really serious for Indonesia. Without yet considering the land subsidence and the other things. So the next slide, just showing how the sea level rise is also a very important we can say disaster when it creates socio-economical loss, yeah, especially for the small island and the lowland area. Yeah. But the next slide, I would like to show how is the catastrophic impact of the sea level rise, which occur integratedly with other phenomena related to the climate change phenomena. Here on the left side is the map showing the flood in Jakarta in 2020, January 2020, was occurred. Yes, indeed, it was because of the extreme weather, the rain intensity, the pink, red, and orange color showing heavy rain up to the extreme rainfall. Unfortunately, the sea level rise play significant role. The sea level rise together with the high tide at the same time. So the rainwater from the land could not flow directly to the ocean, blocked by the sea level rise and high tide. So in combination result in Jakarta flooding. And next slide just showing how we protect our society from all of those catastrophic or not really catastrophic, but accumulation of the impact. We do community education, public education, community preparedness, like what happened in East Nusa Tenggara when we have tropical cyclone, Seroja tropical cyclone. Many people died, more than 100 people died. However, this gentleman was the alumni of our community preparedness school, which can save one village of the fishermen due to the early warning that they receive. They understand the warning, so through the capacity development, community preparedness, we can help the society to be safe. And finally, the next slide. This is example of the monitoring of the sea level rise. Next slide, sorry. This is also several instruments that we put in the coastline, not only to monitor the sea level rise, but also several other phenomena that may become superimposed phenomena that result in catastrophic events. Next slide. This is a mathematical modeling which providing algorithm how to predict the impact, combination impact, not only the sea level rise, but also the tide, the wave, yeah? And the fishermen and community, they can know in 3 days what will be happen with the coastline. Will be the high wave or high tide or the catastrophic event. So it is like an early warning for all community. Even we can know where is the fish spawn available. So the fishermen can catch the fish directly instead of just searching the fish. So basically, despite of the sea level rise, we can also push or help the society to improve their welfare. Maybe a conclusion I would like to, this is the conclusion. It is very important of the sustained and standardized observation and measurement system. So we do need to have observation. We cannot neglect that in order to provide a proper policy, proper decision for the decision maker. Then the importance of tailored information and synergy in science-based approach, and the importance of community preparedness for early action, and the importance of South-South cooperation for building common resilience. There are few examples how we can develop South-South cooperation, especially in the capacity development. We have several training, in-house training here since 2016 for Pacific Island. We train for the meteorological forecasting. We train for tsunami ready. We train for other programs related to the coastal safety and other related disaster. So thank you very much. We are really eager to have this cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Professor Dwi Korita. Please give a big applause to her. And the data and projection you shared, 10 millimeter per year, sea level rise in Indonesia, 2 times higher than the global data, were both eye-opening and crucial for our planning effort. Again, thank you, Ibu Professor Dwi Korita. We will continue the discussion during the Q&A sessions, but before that, let me invite His Excellencies Tri Tariat of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Bapak Tri, has the issue of sea level rise that already explained by Ibu Professor Dwi Korita been included in cooperation agendas internationally?
Well, thank you very much, Professor Irwan, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking after Professor Dwi Korita is something that is very challenging for me because she has been explaining all the things, including some parts that I'm going to respond to your question. Thank you, Professor Dwi Korita. I think she already touched on a very important issue on the South-South cooperation and how Indonesia, in this particular case, her agency has been working through this scheme of the South-South cooperation. Now, speaking of our role, I remember very clearly that in this very room in Bali, we adopted Bali Roadmap on Climate Change. So this is a very historic building, very historic room, and that meeting laid the way to the adoption of Paris Agreement that is excellently crafted in Bali. So to name other activities, perhaps I will start with the recently concluded World Water Forum that Indonesia has also initiated, and we managed to deal with the very difficult issues on water-related climate actions. So in addition to that, we also established with some other countries that have the same concern, we established the Coral Triangle Initiatives. We established Archipelagic and Island States Forum that we had its summit just a few months ago. And of course, we also have been working with other institutions like UNESCAP on the accelerating ocean-based climate action, through which we are going to forward the outcome to the UN Ocean Conference in 2025. Along with other small island developing states, so we share most of our concern. We also are co-hosting the high-level meeting. It's quite long, but high-level meeting on addressing the existential threats posed by the sea level rise in the margin of the UN General Assembly this year. So there are, among other things, that we have been working at the regional and international fora, but bilaterally, I'm sure all the relevant and the concerned ministries and agencies in Indonesia have been working very closely with their counterparts. So this very event in parallel is undertaken in parallel with Indonesia-Africa Forum. We have seen many concrete activities also coming out of the 2 days event on concrete activities, particularly on the cooperation with African countries in the context of environment, including climate change. I was also reported that there have been some discussion on providing some technical capacities, some capacity buildings in different fields with our African colleagues. So there are, among other activities that Indonesia has been taking, and we do not stop here. We are willing to work more, of course, in different fora, in close cooperation with other small and developing island countries. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much for your explanations. Patri, how could South-South cooperation help build and strengthen response to sea level rise?
Well, I was so impressed with one of the slides of Professor Dwi Korawati. So her agency has been doing a lot, but of course it won't be enough to address these very serious challenges. I'm very sure that we have to work with third party through triangular cooperation. I firmly believe that addressing climate change cannot be dealt with by only one country or two countries. It should be dealt by all relevant multi-stakeholders. So I'm willing to listen more to other panelists' views on this. That is my Indonesian government firm belief that we have to work together. We understand also how difficult it is to reach agreements in different, maybe 100 meetings in the context of UNFCCC, but we should not give up. I think all countries are trying its best to save the world, to save the earth, and the most vulnerable ones, of course, the small island states. And Indonesia also share their concerns. And South-South cooperation should also be one of the tools, but again, it should not replace the North-South cooperation. So the obligations on the convention to be taken by state parties, both sides, from developed countries and developing countries, should really be fulfilled in one way or another. And of course, the worst countries to feel the impact of climate change are the small island states. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Please give a big applause to Bapak Tritariat. Your excellent explanation underscored the importance of proactive international cooperations. Again, thank you so much for the information. Next, I would like to move to representatives of the Pacific island countries. His Excellencies Rexon Ramofavia, the Minister of National Planning and Development Coordinations of the Solomon Islands. Please, if you prefer to use the stage. His Excellencies, has sea level rise been considered in policy and development planning in the Pacific island countries?
Thank you, moderators. Before respond to the question directly, Excellency, distinguished speakers, and distinguished delegates, let me on the outset take this opportunity first to acknowledge with appreciation the Honorable Minister of National Development Planning and Head of the National Development Agency of Republic of Indonesia for inviting me to part of this high-level forum and also representing the Pacific countries in this forum. I'm really happy to be part of this forum, and also thank you so much for the hospitality accorded to me and the Minister of Education, and of course our ambassador here. Solomon Islands shares Indonesia geographical similarity as being an archipelagic country and members of the Six Nations of Coral Triangle. That's one of the significant global marine biodiversity hotspots that also support economic and livelihood of millions throughout this region. As it's with rest of the Pacific Island countries, Solomon Island is at the front line of climate change and sea level rise. We are currently experiencing the sea level rise of 8 millimeter per annum since 1993, and this is above 2 to 3 millimeter, as also highlighted by the professor. The global average sea level rise of 2 to 3 times as Solomon Islands sea level rise experience as 8 millimeter. The projections into the future indicate that sea level will continue to rise. Tropical cyclone may reduce in frequencies, but the intensity will increase, and this will have dire consequences for us, or Pacific Island country. We already lost inhabitants of islands and underground fresh waters, and agriculture in low-lying islands suffer from saltwater intrusion. Even large islands are not spared. Most of them have lost large tracts of coastal land, including homes, roads, and graveyards to the sea, and so the cause of sea level rise affecting us right now. At the Ministry of Planning and Development Coordination, one of our key mandates is to coordinate and manage partnership with development partners and other key stakeholders to implement development programs in line with our 20-year national development strategy. Within the priorities of this national development plan, the NDS serves of mapping out the strategic direction for sustainable development and remain the overarching development blueprint to implement not only the national goals, but also the sustainable development goals and other international and regional commitments. One of the 5 objectives of the National Development Strategy center on addressing environmental issues, including disaster risk management, climate change, and sea level rise. These objectives, in addition to its medium-term strategy, have served as the basis for our partnership over resilience and development. In addition to that, National Development Strategy is also have the National Climate Change Policy, which expound on the NDS and clarify specific action, especially in adaptation and mitigation. To address climate change and sea level rise in the country and, of course, across the region, from this policy-specific program and projects are designed and submitted to funding through our budget and also through our development partners. One of the challenges that we face, especially in terms of working closely in accessing financing, because of we find it difficult, especially in accessing climate financing. And it's something that I want to continue to emphasize, how we make financing easier for small island developing states such as Solomon Island. For a country that is highly vulnerable to sea level rise and climate change, and also least responsible for the root cause of sea level rise, our struggling economy partnership are dispensable to us. Our endeavor to address the impact of sea level rise and climate change to meet our sustainable development goals and accelerate efforts towards development have been supported through partnership. And the professor has highlighted how we can work together, especially partners coming together to address the impact of sea level rise and impact of climate change. There are existing mechanisms of cooperation to address climate change and sea level rise. For example, through our regional organizations such as Secretary of the Pacific Regional Environment Program and the University of the South Pacific, inter-regional cooperation mechanisms such as Coral Triangle Initiative are worthwhile cooperation mechanisms that can be linked to proposed Center of Excellence for fostering data and innovation for mechanism in the Indo-Pacific region. My point here is to explore existing mechanism and only create new ones where it is necessary to do so, because we should be focusing on attention on adopting and to mitigate the impact of climate change and sea level rise, as opposed to being tied down to developing mechanism of cooperation. However, we also learn that successful partnership must be deliberately built and nurtured over time. Partnership must be accrued equitable benefits to all partners to sustain their commitment. Furthermore, working in partnership does not mean there will be no disagreement, but also, in fact, food chain must be accepted and managed to heighten the chances of variety of specific and forceful carve out appropriate and optimal solution to address sustainable development challenges. In terms of development cooperation, we work with nearly 20 development partners, and number alone, coupled with our limited capacity and resources, makes coordination of this partnership challenging from the outset. While we stress alignment of our national development strategy to our aid management and development cooperation policy, partners tend to also have their own agenda and boxes to tick as well. We have sought to address this through our regular dialogue and consultation. Relatedly, development partners often place onerous conditions on us tied to their overseas development assistance. And it's something I also want to highlight, that action, we need to address action now, especially in relation to the impact of climate change and sea level rise. This has escalated recently with geographical and also geopolitical conditions. In my view, geopolitical competition and posturing have become setback to partnership, and more importantly, diverted attention from our needs and sustainable development efforts. Let me close by reiterating that partnerships are indispensable for sustainable development efforts in Solomon Islands and across the region. Based on our building existing mechanisms and creating new ones where it's necessary to do much, not to divert attention from addressing concrete terms, climate change and sea level rise impact. We must act now, because the frequency and the tendency of emergency of climate change and sea level rise, we are behind. And so my calling, especially from this forum, for us to act now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Minister Ramofavia. You emphasize on the importance of proactive plannings and international cooperations, including access to climate change financing system. Yes, please.
Just to let you know that the prediction for the high wave in the coastal area for the Solomon Island, we call that as the wave watch prediction, was developed in 2017 in collaboration with our agency and sponsored by UNSCAP. So I do hope it can be continued with other relevant activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for additional information. So it is an evidence of a very good cooperations between Indonesia and Solomon Islands.
Thank you.
And then, are there any existing international cooperation initiatives to mitigate rising sea level in Pacific, particularly in the global south? If any, what actions or efforts have been made?
Yes, thank you. With the work done, especially through the Secretariat of Pacific, especially looking at mitigating factor and adopting especially across the region, and especially in Solomon Islands, and so support through green climate, and also it is that we work in terms of helping ministry responsible, especially Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, through early warning system, and also respond to impact of cyclone, and of course some disaster like flooding or sea level rise of erosion across the low-lying area. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for additional information. Next, I would like to move to Ms. Madeleine Moos, Minister Consular for Governance and Human Development, Australian Embassy in Jakarta. How can different development partners work together on the issue of sea level rise?
Thank you so much. And I'd like to say it's a real pleasure to speak on this panel today. I'd like to acknowledge in particular the Minister for National Planning, Minister Ramofafia from Solomon Islands. Also, we have the Minister for Education from Solomon Islands and the Ambassador in the audience today. Of course, Director General Tree for Multilateral Cooperation in Kemlu as well. It's a real pleasure. Ibu Kanawatay, Kapala BMKG, thank you so much for your really informative presentation. And Nishal and Ahmed as well, thank you so much. I'd also like to thank the Government of Indonesia for this fantastic forum and effort over the last several days in bringing together so many different actors, so many different stakeholders. And of course, Indonesia convened another really diverse and useful group of development partners here in Bali several months ago. So I really want to acknowledge Indonesia's role convening diverse groups of stakeholders so that we can all talk together about how we can share lessons and address global challenges. I think we have the advantage of being, I think, one of the last sessions. So I think when we talk about different types of development partnerships, I might also speak about some of the themes that have echoed across many sessions. And that is that although different development partners will have different ways of operating, they will have sometimes different systems and different methods. But I think what we've all heard today are common lessons about how we can get the best results and be the most effective development partners. And I've heard a lot of agreement around key principles such as mutual respect and responding to the needs of countries, of listening, of ensuring that interventions are appropriate to local conditions, so a localized agenda, being transparent. And of course, I think it was the Director General of Thailand's Cooperation Agency said in the plenary the importance of interventions being based on evidence and supporting, of course, our common goals, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. Last year, Australia actually released a new international development policy that aims to put all of those factors, including a particular emphasis on locally led development, at the heart of what we do. And I think the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, which of course Minister Monoafa from Indonesia co-chairs, really aims to, again, to bring together a range of these development actors around these core principles of development effectiveness. So I think even though this session is on sea level rise, I think a lot of the themes about how we can bring together different stakeholders to address common global challenges are the same across a number of different sectors. I think when I also think about effective multi-stakeholder responses, I actually think of another global challenge that we have all had to address over time, and that is the threat of infectious diseases. And actually, the global community has been very successful in bringing together almost the original multi-stakeholder partnership in support of that. For example, the work of the Global Fund to fight HIV, AIDS, TB and malaria, and the work of Gavi, which pull together funding from philanthropics, from governments, and it has a governance mechanism which accords a voice to all those different types of development partners. And so I think there are some very effective lessons to be learned from other global challenges which do not respect borders, which affect all of us, and we can bring that to bear as we look at the challenge of sea level rise and climate. I also think that there's a really impressive and interesting development coming out of the Pacific in terms of looking at finance to fight sea level rise and climate change. And that's the newly established Pacific Resilience Facility, which again aims to pull together financing from a wide range of partners within the Pacific and outside of the Pacific as well, for a fund that provides finance for disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation that is owned by the Pacific and is specific for the needs of that region. So I think we have some existing multi-stakeholder partnerships that have been in operation to address global challenges for a while. And I think we have some new ones that are coming on board specifically to look at climate finance efforts globally. So I think there are some really interesting examples and lessons to be learned from those.
Okay, thank you. Are there any existing international cooperation initiative to mitigate rising sea level in the Pacific? You mentioned about Pacific Resilience Initiative, particularly from the Global South. If any, what action and or effort have the initiative made?
Thank you so much. Look, I think we're going to have some experts in water and sea level rise. Ahmed and Nichelle speak next. But I just wanted to, I guess in particular, highlight the cooperation between Indonesia and Australia in the Pacific region. Director General Tree has outlined that actually we need many different types of partnerships. We need multilateral partnerships, bilateral, we need multi-stakeholders and triangular cooperation, and I couldn't agree more. Ahmed will speak more about UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific, which is an initiative that is funded and supported by Government of Indonesia, by Australia and the United Nations. And UN Global Pulse is the United Nations Secretary General's Innovation Lab. There are a number of centres across the world, and Indonesia hosts UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific. Ahmed is the head of the agency. And I think that this is a really good example of where lessons from a range of countries, including here in Indonesia, can be applied to different countries and become almost like a regional public good, I think. So I think that's a really exciting initiative. And just to build on the comments from Kepala BMKG as well, Australia and Indonesia see that we have a lot of experiences to share in disaster risk reduction. So just next week, actually, we have everyone knows, we have a great Indonesia-Australia study tour planned for senior officials from Fiji to come and see some of the fantastic experiences of Indonesia and to really showcase some of that work as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your information. Next, I would like to move to Mr. Ahmad Khamis El Said, Head of UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific. What has UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific done in the context of responding to sea level rise?
Thank you very much, Professor. And allow me first to thank the distinguished guests and speakers, ministers, honorable ministers, excellencies. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you. It's a very, very interesting moment, I think, to highlight a bit more about what we have done, especially in collaboration with Government of Indonesia and Government of Australia, supporting the efforts of Global Pulse and scaling our existence in Indonesia to become the regional hub for the Asia Pacific. May I have the slides, please? I have a few slides just introducing what we've done. I hope that we can get them online so we can...
I think we will have time to...
Yes,
oh,
okay, good. So thank you, Maddie, for the introduction. For Global Pulse, really continues to be a success story of collaboration between the UN, Government of Indonesia and Government of Australia. The lessons learned really across, I would say, more than 10 years of collaboration on big data and AI has led to the successful launch of the Asia Pacific Hub of UN Global Pulse. UN Global Pulse is the UN Secretary General's Innovation Lab. Next, please. We work across sectors and we try and work with new capabilities to bring innovative solutions to accelerate sustainable development. So we work with data, AI, strategic foresight, behavioral science, and taking innovations to scale. And we try and work at that intersection between the human sciences and innovation, attempting to accelerate sustainable development. We've heard earlier today about 15% only of sustainable development indicators being on track, another 15% actually regressing. There are key challenges and the world is unfortunately off track. I think in this region, Asia Pacific, we're talking about the latest SCAP estimates, we're talking about only achieving the SDGs potentially by 2062, so missing the 2030 target, and there are quite many challenges across the region. Next, please. We have been working closely with Government of Indonesia, Government of Australia to identify key priorities where we can develop prototype and pilot solutions in Indonesia and take the lessons learned from Indonesia to the region. We believe that through this approach and through Indonesia's leadership in the region, we can really add value by bringing these lessons learned and learnings from existing impactful solutions. So we worked on addressing the impacts of sea level rise, looking at the data and seeing how it can inform policies. So learning from data sources, rich data sources, and thank you, Professor, for mentioning that earlier. There are very rich data sets in Indonesia that we can really build on. Additional data sets were also available from Bappenas and other sources, and also from universities, so from academic sources, bringing all of this data together and trying to inform policy in Indonesia. Next, please. I'm not going to go through the details of why this is an important issue. I think this was covered thoroughly before. We do understand that this will continue to be a challenging issue, especially for economic development, hindering growth in the Pacific, also affecting Indonesia. The statistics are available, and I think there is a big body of evidence actually showcasing why the issue of sea level rise that has drastic implications, especially on Indonesia as the largest archipelagic state, but also Pacific Islands is to be seen. Next, please. So what have we done so far? And we have a short segment where we're going to be showcasing the actual solution after our panel. So we've worked alongside the government, working across ministries to identify the data gaps and to try and look at what is available, how can we bring different data sets together, do an analysis on sea level rise to inform policy. We have developed and co-created with colleagues in Bappenas a data-driven decision support tool that utilizes the different layers of data to create and generate insights to help with prioritization and help as well with informing national policies and plans. And we have co-created a scenario planning exercise that will be also showcased after this panel. And this shows different districts of Indonesia adding different layers related to food security, population density, among others, to understand better the potential impact that sea level rise could have with the different scenarios and meters. So what has been the result of this over the past year almost? We have helped identify areas that are more vulnerable to risks, especially also to tidal flooding. And this platform has served as a good communication platform to advocate and create awareness as well among a wide range of stakeholders. This was supported by the Government of Australia and the Government of Indonesia. Next, please. What we hope to do next, working alongside colleagues in Indonesia to inform the national policy, national sea level rise policy currently spearheaded by colleagues also in the government. And we also hope that we integrate more layers of data, leading to the scaling of the existing solution. This should enable the government also to explore more and generate more insights to inform national plans. We're also exploring adding other data sets and alternate data sets combined with existing projections. This will also only be sustainable and scalable if we continue to co-create with our colleagues in the government, build capacity to sustain it, and do more integration with existing platforms. Next, please. We do have plans to also offer support in the Pacific, and we are in conversations with countries in the Pacific, and I'm really glad to hear about the progress made in Solomon Islands and hope to continue the conversation with His Excellency the Minister after this panel. So we have already ongoing conversations and wish to expand on this and seeing how we can potentially scale out this solution in the Pacific. There has been interest shown also from Government of Australia and Government of Indonesia to potentially support this moving forward, and we look forward to working alongside other technical agencies and existing mechanisms to scale this also to the Pacific as needed. Next, please. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions and also to the opportunity for my colleague to present more the interesting part, which is the actual solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Please give a big applause to Mr. Ahmed. Okay, lastly, we will invite Mr. Nishal Sarju, the Indonesia country representative of Delta Res. What is Delta Res, and what role does it play in mitigating sea level rise?
Thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much, distinguished panelists, guests, ministers, excellencies. It's really good to be here, and like the previous speaker said, I think I was in the same hall during the World Water Forum where we together said that we're going to tackle climate change and sea level rise. So it's good to see the same people again, the same commitment again, and now we have to move forward. It's a very, very, very big question. What is Delta Res? The screen says Delta Res as an independent institute for applied research in the field of water and subsurface. We are a Dutch not-for-profit institute. Shareholders, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management and the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And for the Dutch, the Dutch government, we work a lot. In principle, we are the knowledge partner for water, soil, subsurface for the Dutch government. On the screen, it's your right side. You see a very, very old picture. That's the Afsluitdijk. You know, the Netherlands is a very low-lying country. If you land in Schiphol, you are actually 3 to 4 meters below sea level, the airport. So we have massive assets that we have to protect from sea level rise, from climate change, from water. That's why very, very long ago, the Dutch government decided that we are really going to invest in protecting our assets. That does not mean that we only invest in physical assets. We also invest in knowledge. We need knowledge to be able to understand that dikes and barriers and whatever we build, things are going to change. And we see these changes with the graphs that Ibu showed also. We need to be adaptive. On the left side, you see the Maaslandkering. That's a massive barrier that protects the hinterland of Rotterdam, one of the biggest ports in Europe. That structure only closes once a year to test it. I've never seen it close. Last year, it closed once because we had high tides on sea. It's very scary when we see these structures closing and when we see what the impact can be. I used to live in Rotterdam. If we see the barrier closing, if we know that the barrier is closing, then we think, what is going to happen with our economic livelihood? So what I want to tell you is that we build barriers, we do things, we understand what the causes is of sea level rise, but it's also important to remember that the impact is not only the actual sea rising, but we are talking about human impacts. Impacts on flora, impacts on fauna. Yeah. Deltares also has facilities. On the right, on the bottom, you see a big flume. This is where we are unique in the world, in our facilities in Delft. We test things here. We experiment with solutions. Those are mangroves in the fields or in the flume. So we can flood the flume. We can test the effects of mangroves. A couple of weeks ago, they put corals in there to see what the effect is of, I think it was also harder waves or stronger waves on different corals. So what we do is test, make our research applicable, bring it towards policymakers all across the world. In the Netherlands, we have a very specific position. In Indonesia, for example, we have been working with the Ministry of Public Works and Housing for a very long time. We have an ongoing MOU on water, the Dutch government between these two ministries. And for example, we also have an MOU with the Republic of Marshall Islands. So also towards the Pacific areas. Can I go to the next slide, please? What does Deltares do on climate change and sea level rise? Like I said, we understand the causes of sea level rise. It's time that we better understand the impact of sea level rise and climate change, or whatever combined. So what we try to do is understand the consequences of sea level rise and identify possible solutions for the long term. When I say solutions, it's very important to understand that there is no solution that fits all situations. It's always a tailor-made solution. Many of the words that I'm going to say, you've already heard here. Tailor-made, inclusive, integrated. All buzzwords, but all words that are seriously, we need to seriously consider how we approach these words and how we bring it to practice. So we define solutions, but we know that solutions are not always the solutions that are going to help. So what do we learn? We know what the basis of these solutions should be. We know that they should be integrated, multidisciplinary, so we need to bring everybody together. Urban planners, economists, anthropologists, you name it, flood risk analysts. Not towards the end of our cycle, but in the beginning. We work a lot on urban resilience, for example, in the Pacific, where we try to do it together with architecture firms. We get these beautiful renderings. For example, in Honiara also, we're going to work in Honiara in a couple of weeks. And what you see there is that this discipline together brings the added value. We experiment, I've talked about that. Our solutions are adaptive because we know that we have to change things, so lock-ins are not permitted anymore. We need to be informing. So for example, Deltares also writes as a lead author in the IPCC, 6th IPCC assessment report. But those are very scientific reports. So what we need to do is also transform that to better and more understandable for our locals, for me. If you're not technical, you also need to understand the IPCC report. And lastly but not least, inclusive. Inclusive means that we consider culture, that we consider heritage, that we consider people that are paying for the effects of sea level rise and who are not necessarily the people that cause sea level rise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nishal, can you elaborate more? How can the experience and knowledge of Deltares in water science be utilized to mitigate sea level rise in the global south, especially in the Pacific Island countries?
Thank you so much for the question. I have one slide left. Okay, so there is a lot that we can do together, but I chose three principles. Technology meets tradition, hybrid approaches. That's a very, very important one because I've worked a couple of weeks ago in Samoa, and what you see there, and across all the Pacific Islands, for example, is that when we come in with highly technological solutions, they are very useful, but if you look at the chain, for example, for early warning systems, if you look at the chain, at the end of the day, at the end of the chain, it is, for some communities, it is about ringing a church bell. A different bell has a different meaning. It's a tsunami, or it's a flood, or it's an extreme event. So tradition is very, very important to be incorporated. And that is not something that we do well as a scientific community, because we sit behind our desk and we do research. So we have to go more in the field, and we have to understand that culture and tradition and heritage is very important to complement our highly technological, remote sensing, data-driven approaches. That is very important, and we've seen our colleagues addressing that very emphasis also. The second one, and the picture that you see is in Samoa. I find it a very interesting picture because there is no drainage in Samoa, in Apia. But what people do, they use the lay of the land and to drain. So they have no, in principle, they have no flooding issues because they use the lay of the land and they build their houses a little bit higher. So traditionally, things have been going on for years and years and years and years. So that is just something that I wanted to bring in here, that things have been going on. Water and soil as guiding principles for planning. In 2022, the Dutch government set out a policy from the highest level that everything that we do in the Netherlands on urban planning or coastal planning or whatever has to be guided by water and soil engineering. Because what we do underground has an impact on what we do above ground. And we see that in Jakarta, for example, with land subsidence. With growing urbanization in the Pacific, I think that's something that we can learn also. And last but not least, capacity building and mutual learning. We've seen that also across all the panelists, very important. The thing here that I want to emphasize is that we learn from each other. It's not capacity building only towards the Pacific. We learn from each other because, for example, for the Netherlands, dealing with cultural aspects is something that the Pacific Islands does much better than us. So it's very important that we say mutual learning. What you see on the slides is you began the panel with a new DEM, a digital elevation model. So that is a digital elevation model that was just published 2-3 weeks ago by scientists at Delta Ares using remote sensing data, so satellite driven a little bit. Thank you so much. I hope it helps.
Thank you so much. Learn from each other. Please give applause to Ms. Nishal. Well, with that, all the panelists have spoken, and we will move to the Q&A session. To begin the Q&A sessions, I would like to give the opportunity for the 3 questions. Please raise your hand. Okay, maybe let me begin with the first questions. Data integrations and accuracy. It is some things that always needed by scientists. But I believe that in order to have a good decision-making process, we need to have a very good data integration and accuracy. So do you have any comments about that, Ibu Dikorita, Ms. Michelle, and Ahmed about that? So do you think that now we have enough in terms of quality of the data for the sea level rise in Indonesia?
Well, indeed, for the sea level rise, which we consider as the slow onset, yeah, so we have the data from Geospatial Agency. Yes, indeed, it has delayed time, but say like 5 minutes up to 10 minutes delay. But for measuring the sea level rise, 10 minutes is nothing. So that's quite or perhaps it's very good observation. However, when we need that for other purposes, like we need to have the early warning system, non-seismic early warning system, 5 minutes is not proper. So it depends on what the purpose of, we have that data. So if sea level rise, that's okay. And indeed, for integration of the data, I think it is very important, because when we talk about the sea level rise, we also need to know how is impact of other phenomena to the sea level rise itself. So what we're worrying is the catastrophic impact due to multi-control phenomena to the sea level rise. So that's why we have some data like from the weather observation, and indeed it is the validation or accuracy, it's 90% slightly beyond. So it is quite okay. And the satellite and also the radar, and also we put all of the data into the simulation modeling utilizing AI. So that will be much powerful to model the phenomena, to understand the phenomena more clear about the sea level rise and the other related phenomena and the impact, and then to predict what is in the near future or in 100 years ahead. And finally, we do expect the decision, or first the conclusion will be appropriate and the decision will be appropriate as well. So I do believe it is very important. Data integration, data exchange. It is not necessary one agency have all the data owned by one agency. It can be collaborative observation, joint observation, and the important thing, don't neglect the data. Don't neglect that. Most of the decision, we do worry not considering the data, so that can be misleading information. One example for the data integration is PUPR, BMKG, and ASDM. That's Minister of ASDM, is mining and resources, yeah, mining resources. We have the data for the hydrometeorology, then hydrogeology, and hydrology. That's just the example. So for the sea level rise, we can also have that kind of data. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. So while I firmly believe that data is very important, and the more you have, the more you can say, I also believe that together we have the experience and the knowledge to make decisions, sometimes without having a lot of data. I mean, I do so many projects where we end up in long monthly discussions about we need more data, we need more data, we need more data. Of course, you can make your model so good as you want, but at a certain point, you have to say, okay, this is enough to make decisions or to inform policies. But like Ibu said, some phenomena are long-term, so you have the time. Sometimes you don't have the time to make your model as perfect as possible. At the end of the day, it's just a model. It's just a tool. And for integration, in many countries, also in the Netherlands, also in Europe, in the US, you see that integration is very important, but why do we not share data with each other? Do we need MOUs to share with each other? Because data is power, data is information. So we want to share, but we do not share. That's such a difficult thing to do. And that is where the challenge lies.
Very interesting.
A lot has been said in this. I will just add a couple of points. One, very briefly, is that it's about what kind of insights we want to generate. We need to look at what do we want to achieve at the end. Data generation, I mean, we have lots of data pipelines generated formally and informally. We have non-traditional data sets and non-conventional data sets that can be combined with the conventional official statistics and data sets to create and generate these insights. We need to continue to understand better the needs of the given like innovation or solution that we want to develop, and that will guide us with identifying the right types of data sets to bring together to generate the insights that will inform the policy that we want to like address or want to set. So that's one. The second thing that I want to quickly highlight is that we need to also look sometimes beyond the data, how it was collected, from who, in what conditions, what does it mean. So understanding the qualitative aspects of the quantitative ways of measuring data is also quite critical. And this is why, and it was touched a bit like briefly on, when you develop a solution, you need to understand people's needs. You need to understand who is going to be the user, what kind of decisions they need to make before you try and copy something that has been used somewhere else, or think about something that worked in one context that could be copied to another. So applying human-centric design in any type of solution development is quite important in order to ensure that it will be owned by local stakeholders who will be sustaining it long term. So also that element is quite important to add when thinking about data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And Ibu Madeleine, how are Australia, together with Indonesia, collaborating with Pacific Island countries to develop joint strategies for mitigating the impact of sea level rise?
Thank you. Look, I think UN Global Pulse is the main triangular cooperation initiative between Australia and Indonesia at this point in time. And we really hope that lessons that are useful in Indonesia can eventually be scaled out and used by other countries, including the Pacific, but also in the Southeast Asia region as well. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. And to Minister Ramofavia, given the projected rise in sea level, how is the National Planning Office adapting infrastructure development plans to enhance resilience against coastal flooding and erosions?
Thank you, thank you. In terms of, because the experience that we have now, that infrastructure that was built because of we are not taking into account the impact of climate change and sea level rise. So we lost especially millions of dollars that we built on infrastructure, and then because of flooding or heat waves and that sort of damaging the infrastructure. And so taking into account especially infrastructure that can withstand climate impact, and that's come back to it's important in terms of data and also information that can help decision makers, so that in terms of making this in that source of addressing climate infrastructures that can withstand impact of sea level rise or disaster such as cyclone or flooding. And so that's something that developing policies that can stand against the impact of climate change is something that is important in the design and costing of infrastructure especially can stand against the impact of climate change is something important.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists for the explanations and also answering the Q&A sessions. And next, to act upon our discussion in the issue of sea level rise, the UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific have introduced an analytical tools that will give us insight on how are the danger of sea level rise in different geographical regions. To launch this tool, I would like to invite the team from UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific to the stage. Sorry, okay. So could you please introduce the UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific?
So thank you very much. My name is Faisal Tamrin. I'm a data innovation lead from the UN Global Pulse Asia Pacific. Can I see the video, please? So, dear distinguished panelists and esteemed guests and all participants, so allow me to present the tools that we built together with collaboration with the Bappenas. But before I start, I would like to highlight our partners, which is the government of Indonesia, together with the government of Australia, and thank them for their generous support. So, as you see from the tools itself, we have three types of component. One is basically what we call scenario planning, which is interactive simulation. So people will be able to play around with the tools to be able to see what happens when the 1 meter sea level rise happens, or even until 5 meters. We also have what we call additional layer component, which is consists of 2 layers. For now, we're planning to add more different layers later on, which is one is land subsidence, and the other one is what we call affected population, which is only focused currently only for 1 meter sea level rise. The third one is the cluster analysis, which is like Ahmed already mentioned, is some sort like a prioritization tools, because as you know, Indonesian have around 514 or 19 districts or municipalities, which is quite a lot. And to be able to make sure that we'll be able to, when we do intervention or we're doing policy, we'll make sure that we'll be able to looking into how we'll be able to identify areas that have similarities in terms of geographic kind of aspects. So that's one of the tools that we have. The other one is called regional development clusters, which is ideally, it's another kind of layer where when we do the interventions in certain areas, district or municipalities, each of these districts also have the regional development. In this case, what you see here is basically 2 components that we're adding. One is related to the poverty, the other one is related to the food insufficiency. By doing that, we'll be able to understand better, for example, what type of intervention that we're able to do to be able to address the problems that they have. So this is, it's going, so this is the first one, it's the, what we call the projections. So you'll be able to playing around to see what happens. This is good for the planning one. So the government will be able to understand better what type of area is affected and what type of sub-district is affected by 1 meter, 2 meter, and so on. The second one, it's basically related to the affected population. This is a good way on how we'll be able to understand better what is the concentrate of population in certain areas. So for example, within this 1 meter sea level rise, we'll be able to see which part of the area that is affected by sea level rise have high population density by looking into these maps. So this is something that it's also will be able to do roughly calculation on how many population will be affected by the sea level rise. The third aspects within that, as already mentioned by Professor Dwi Kora, it's related to the land subsidence. This is still, we are using a global data sets, but it's a good kind of indicators on which area it's already have a land subsidence in Indonesia. This is the cluster one. So when you select the cluster, you'll be able to see the characteristic of the clusters. but also at the same time you'll be able to see also the districts that part of that clusters. This is a good kind of summary in terms of understanding better what it's the similarities between different municipalities with the different characteristics. This is a statistical model that we will apply when we've done this. This is the regional development clusters. For example, this is a poverty in one of the clusters. So we'll be able to understand basically what type of poverty level within each of these sub-districts that part of the one group of the clusters. Then this is we combine between food insufficiency together with the poverty level. I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very impressive. After launching the sea level rise analytical tools, we have reached the end of the sessions. From our conversations, several key themes have emerged as a conclusion. The first one is data integrations, research, and collaborations. There is a need for better integrations of global and local data on sea level rise, collaborative research involving agencies, Indonesia, Australia, and also in Pacific nations, and local scientists is essential for accurate projection and region-specific adaptation strategies. International cooperations, trilateral and multilateral cooperation is crucial for a coordinated response. Joint diplomatic efforts are necessary to secure international funding and resources. Addressing social and economic impacts. Focus on the social and economic effects, particularly on vulnerable communities, is critical. International partnerships are needed to support community resilience and economic diversifications. Public awareness, rising public awareness through educational campaign and digital platform is essential for community support of adaptation and measures. Thank you everyone for attending these sessions, and with that, I return the stage to the MC.
Thank you very much to our moderator and all panelists for the very insightful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please give applause to our panelists and moderator. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may return to your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session today. Thank you for attending the high-level forum on multi-stakeholder partnerships organized by the Ministry of National Development Planning of the Republic of Indonesia. Finally, I am Valerina Daniel. Good afternoon and see you next time.